For hundreds of years, France's vineyards followed the calendar, not perfectly. Weather always mattered. Vintage always mattered. But the rhythm was familiar. September meant harvest. Pickers in the vines. Cool mornings. Grapes crossing the line from sour to ripe. This year, that rhythm is changing in a way you can see. Champagne could begin harvesting around August 15th, almost a month earlier than what many people think of as the classic French harvest season. That is not just unusual, it is a warning. Because the date on the harvest calendar is not trivia, it is one of the clearest signals of what happened in the vineyard. And in 2026, France's vineyards are telling us something very loudly. The climate that shaped the world's most famous wines is changing, and that changes what ends up in your glass. The story starts with time. Wine has always been a calendar written in grapes. Bud break in spring, flowering, fruit set. Veraison, when berries soften and change color. Then harvest, when sugar, acid, flavor, tannin, weather, labor, and risk all collide into one decision. For centuries, many French regions expected the main wine harvest to fall in September, but harvest dates have been moving earlier. One of the strongest pieces of evidence comes from Burgundy. Researchers reconstructed grape harvest dates in Beaune going all the way back to 1354. That is more than 6 centuries of wine calendar. Before the late 1980s, Beaune grapes were typically picked from September 28th onward. Since 1988, harvests have begun about 13 days earlier on average. That is not one strange vintage. That is the calendar itself shifting. And 2026 is a vivid current example of the same pressure. After intense heat and dry conditions, champagne growers are preparing for what could be an exceptionally early harvest, possibly around August 15th. Growers have also warned that grape yields may be roughly 10% below last year. Bordeaux and Burgundy are watching the same basic problem from different angles: heat, water stress, and a ripening clock that moves faster than it used to. So why does an early harvest matter? Because grapes do not ripen along one simple line. Most people think ripeness means sugar, and sugar is important. More sugar usually means more potential alcohol. But wine balance depends on several things ripening together. Sugar rises, acidity falls, aromas develop, skins and seeds change, tannins mature, the vine manages water, heat, sunlight, and stress. In a steady season, these pieces can line up beautifully, but in a hotter season, sugar can race ahead. The grape can look ready on a lab sheet before it tastes ready in the vineyard. That creates the modern winemaker's dilemma. Pick early and you may preserve acidity and keep alcohol moderate, but you may also miss flavor depth or tannin maturity. Wait longer and the flavors may become richer, but alcohol climbs, acidity drops, berries may shrivel, and the wine can lose the freshness that made the region famous. This is the part of climate change that wine drinkers can taste, not just lower yield, different balance, different texture, different aromas, different aging potential. Now look, region by region. Champagne is the most dramatic case because Champagne does not want grapes to ripen. The same way a powerful, still red wine does, Champagne depends on acidity. Those base wines need tension, freshness, and brightness because they will go through secondary fermentation and spend time aging on lees. If the season gets too warm too quickly, grapes can gain sugar while the acid structure softens. That is a very different problem from simply asking, are the grapes ripe? In Champagne, the better question is, can we keep enough freshness to make Champagne taste like champagne? That is why an August 15th harvest forecast matters. It is not only early, it pushes directly against the style's architecture. Bordeaux faces a different problem. Heat and drought can shrink berries. Smaller berries can mean more skin relative to juice. And because much of Bordeaux quality depends on skins, tannins, color, and phenolic material, that can sound like a good thing. More concentration, more structure, more intensity. But concentration is only good until the vine becomes too stressed. If water stress goes too far, vines can shut down, yields fall, tannins can become hard, alcohol can rise, and the wine can move from structured to heavy. So the Bordeaux question is not, is drought good or bad? The real question is, how much stress can the vine handle before concentration becomes imbalance? Burgundy may be even more delicate. Pinot Noir is famously sensitive. It can show tiny differences in site, vintage, and picking decision. That is why people love it. But it also means extreme heat can push it out of its classic shape. Acidity softens. Fresh red fruit can become darker and jammier. Alcohol can climb. The fine line between elegance and overripeness gets thinner. For Burgundy, the problem is not that every warm year is bad. Some warm years are beautiful. The problem is that the old margin for error is shrinking, and the effects are not always what people expect. Climate change is not simply making wine better or worse, it is changing style. Wines can become riper. Alcohol levels can rise. Acidity can fall. Harvest windows can compress. Aromas can shift from fresh fruit toward cooked fruit. Wines that once needed years to soften may feel more open earlier. Wines built for long aging may age differently, and the map of possibility is moving. Cooler places are becoming more interesting. Warmer places are becoming more complicated. Southern England is now a serious sparkling wine region in a way that would have sounded unlikely not long ago. That does not mean England replaces champagne. It means the climate logic that made champagne exceptional is no longer standing still. Winemakers are not just watching this happen, they are adapting. Some harvest at night to bring cooler fruit into the cellar, some change canopy management, leaving more shade to protect grapes from sunburn. Some rethink trellising so the vine carries light and heat differently. Some use cover crops to protect soil structure and manage water. Some study rootstocks that handle drought better. Some experiment with clones that ripen differently. Some are quietly reconsidering which grape varieties will make sense for the next generation. These are not cosmetic changes. They are signs of an industry trying to preserve identity while the growing season changes underneath it. That is the most important point. French wine is not famous because it is one thing. Champagne is not Bordeaux. Bordeaux is not Burgundy. Burgundy is not the Rhone. Each region became famous because grapes, soils, climate, laws, craft, and culture lined up in a particular way over time. When the climate changes, that entire relationship has to be renegotiated. The calendar moves, the grapes change, the picking decision changes, the cellar choices change, and eventually the wine changes. So when you see an early French harvest headline, do not read it as a piece of agricultural trivia. Read it as a message from the vines. Every bottle captures a single growing season. The 2026 vintage may someday be remembered not just for how it tasted, but for how clearly it showed what is happening. France's greatest wine regions are still great. The skill is still there, the history is still there. But the conditions that shape that greatness are moving, and wine is becoming one of climate change's earliest historians.